Welcome back to Harbour Unboxed. Tim and I are still on location in Taiwan, Taipei for Computex, but the show's ended now and we fly out today, but we've got a free day, Tim.
What else are we going to do?
Well, we might as well do some work. So this isn't work though. You know, we asked you guys if you had some questions for us and you did. So we're going to answer them in this video. But before we do, our 2026 Computex coverage is brought to you by MSI and their GeForce RTX 50 series graphics cards, including flagship models like the Supreme Liquid and Vanguard, both of which delivered class-leading results in our testing. Powered by Nvidia's Blackwell architecture, RTX 50 series GPUs are the ultimate way to experience ray tracing, delivering more realistic lighting and visual fidelity than ever before. You'll also benefit from AI-powered DLSS 4.5 frame generation and Nvidia Reflex for smoother, more responsive gameplay. So for more information on MSI's GeForce RTX 50 series of graphics cards, please check the links in the video description. Finally, a big thank you to G.Skill for helping to make our Computex trip possible this year. G.Skill offers an outstanding range of DDR5 memory with AMD Expo and AMD Expo featuring ultra low latency support specifically designed to maximize AMD Ryzen performance. So for more information, please check the links in the video description. All right, first question. Were there any signs at Computex of how crippled the PC hardware demand situation is? Or was it business as usual? We actually got a pretty good sense of that, speaking with a lot of different companies, and yeah, opinions varied.
Yeah, I think as far as like the show floor, like the suites, booths that we saw were concerned, it all seemed pretty normal, like pretty similar to previous years in terms of like the amount of stuff that was shown there, the size, the extravagance of the booths. And there were actually some companies at Computex that weren't here previously. So for example, I think Dell that we covered on the Monitors channel, they were the first time here since 2019, they said. So they're back at the show. Samsung Display had a public booth this year, and Gigabyte as well. Usually they had an off-site location, but they actually brought their show into the main show floor, which is usually like the premium location, if you will. So yeah, as far as all that stuff is concerned, it seemed like companies were just showing off their products as normal, no real concern. They weren't pulling back necessarily to sort of go, well, we have nothing to show here, or, you know, we're going to not spend the money because demand is low. So from that side, it all seemed normal. And then, yeah, we were chatting to some companies and just sort of, you know, sussing the vibe, I guess, of like what it's like in this sort of AI demand situation. We did get some varying reports, but I wouldn't say it was as doomery as we've heard from, you know, some of the content that's been produced in some specific reports. There were certainly companies that we spoke to that had seen little to no impact in terms of, you know, the demand that they're expecting, the sales that they're seeing at the moment are sort of what they had expected. Because of course, while, you know, DRAM is making PC building expensive, we're also in a mid-cycle period. So companies sort of expect that, you know, if there's no CPU or GPU launches happening, then they're not going to see crazy demand for their products. So yeah, and it just varied. Like displays, for example, we saw a lot of monitor vendors and all of them were saying, you know, this is a great time for monitors. You know, our monitor business is increasing. You know, things are getting crazier. The popularity hasn't dropped off at all because of the demand for, you know, PC gaming or whatever. And the display panel manufacturers have also been really happy with how things are going on the gaming monitor side. You know, expanding production, making more panel formats, really diversifying. So they're all really happy. I think it's more, would you say, like some of the manufacturers that do specific products, like maybe cases without that sort of broad range, that are sort of suffering a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. And even, you know, the memory module makers like G.Skill, they're not wrapped with the current situation, but they're companies that haven't really diversified what they do. So if the thing they do specifically gets impacted, then it's going to hurt them a lot more. Whereas if we speak to the bigger brands, say Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, depending on who you spoke to within those companies, you got, you know, varying reports. So the guys that were in charge of motherboards, they're sort of sitting there going, oh, it's not so good right now. Like, got any good news for us? They're kind of asking us like when we think things will pick up and stuff like that, which is funny asking us. I guess they're just trying to work out what people think. But then you speak to maybe the VGA guys, the guys in charge of graphics cards, which we thought they'd also be sort of a similar tune there. But to our surprise, they were like, no, things are pretty good. Like graphics card sales are pretty good. I guess, again, where they would expect the sales to be at this point of the cycle. So we're kind of in like one of the lower, we're in the lull for GPU sales historically. And even then, you know, based on that, they're like, yeah, it's pretty good out here. We're not struggling too much. It's were doing well. And then the system side of things, the system integration side of things, they're like, yeah, it's actually going really well. Like they were surprised by, how well it was going. So yeah, the bigger companies, depends on the department you speak to, but then if there are companies that specialize in, specific things, whether they just make cases or whatever, and if you're just making cases and you're selling just to consumers, then probably going to be pretty bad there, because that's where you're seeing slow motherboard sales and that sort of stuff, because you guys are holding out.
Yeah, I think the big three, Taiwanese manufacturers, so I'm talking MSI, Asus, Gigabyte, they're so diverse in what they do. It's not just consumer hardware either. They do a lot of server side things. They can genuinely capitalize from AI products, not just slapping AI on a case and being like, well, we're trying to capitalize. I mean, like actually making products that, are part of the AI boom, that they don't seem overly concerned as a whole. Like, sure, motherboard sales might be down 30 or 40%, which is bad for that specific division. But if you take the, company as a whole, it shows a very different picture. The whole company isn't down 30%. It may only be down by, single digit percentages. And yeah, the graphics card thing was really surprising, speaking to some of them, because I would have expected a similar impact to the motherboards. But
yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, and then it really depends, because there were also some of the component manufacturers that I thought would be a bit more impacted, especially after seeing the Gamers Nexus video where he was interviewing some of the system integrators, companies like Cooler Master and that. But when we were going around to some of the other companies that weren't featured in that video, they were like, yeah, look, we sort of saw what was in that video. We saw the reports and things like that, but our business hasn't been affected as badly. I think some of that depends on some of the strategic decisions they made. So I think Cooler Master, for example, they brought a lot of stock into the US to avoid tariffs, and then they got kind of rolled by the lower demand. So they've got all this stock that they need to sell, but they can't because of the, the current PC situation. Not all brands did that. They didn't make those moves. And so they've been able to be a bit more agile. And then you hear from some companies that are just like, yeah, look, I mean, things are a little slower. We're spending some time to do a few more things that, we normally wouldn't have the time to do, but we're not overly concerned at the moment. I think, though, it's going to really depend on what we see later in this year, because if the vibes seem to me a little bit like, things are, they could be better now, but if the November sales period or whatever is really bad, then I think the opinion of these companies is going to be a lot more, a lot different. But they haven't gone through that period yet since this thing has started. So yeah, I think they're going to live or breathe based on that. Yeah, live or die, based on that sort of situation at the end of the year. But there was a lot of products announced as well, like a lot of new cases and things like that. So from that sense, they're sort of full steam ahead.
Yep.
So in a similar vein, this was the most heavily upvoted question on YouTube. What was the general vibe at the event? Did people seem depressed over plummeting sales, or were they just happy to share their new products? I think a lot of the engineers that you speak to, so the people that actually have made the products, who are often on the show floor, right? There's marketing people there. There's also like product managers and those sorts of things. It's not really their job to be overly concerned about specific sales of products. That can be like just a different division that deals with that. So a lot of people that we spoke to, I think, were just really excited to be like, look, here's my new monitor, here's my new motherboard that I've spent the last 6 months working on. And they just love talking tech. So they're just hyped about, their favorite creators or whatever coming and looking at the products that they've sort of spent all this time working on. I think there's some people who are sort of more in the sort of, the vibe's not great. But I think
overall, I think it was positive. Like people weren't hanging their heads going, oh, this is so bad. It wasn't like a Wall Street's plummeting type situation. It was, people were generally pretty upbeat, enjoying the show and what they had to show. So yeah, it was overall, I would say, positive.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think there was too much sort of encroachment of AI into the consumer parts to sort of dull the vibe of like, product managers having to be like, oh, look at my new AI, feature or whatever that I don't really believe in. It wasn't, there wasn't too much of that. It was just, look, here's our consumer products. We think they're really good. And, hopefully things are going to pick up and people will actually be interested in them.
Yep. How much of Computex was AI this year? I personally was pretty surprised by how little of it was AI, especially given some of the things we heard about how they were getting like into the show and positioning various companies. But I don't know, personally, I didn't see that much AI stuff compared to previous years where we're getting really dumb products like AI water coolers and AI SSDs and AI memory. And basically every product just seemed to have AI somewhere in the name. But I don't know, I felt like there was a lot less of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the start of this sort of AI boom a couple of years ago, when it was sort of every company was trying to get investment to do AI or some sort of AI feature, that everyone was slapping AI on everything. And I guess over the last couple of years, they've just realized that that just doesn't work for PC consumer products. Like,
Yes.
if anything, it makes someone angry or like
Less likely to
annoyed. They're
buy,
like,
yeah.
do I buy the AI SSD or do I just buy the normal SSD? And I think the implication there is like the AI one is more expensive and it's giving you nothing. So customers have sort of been avoiding that. So yeah, when you go to the show floor, of course, there's AI companies. There's big server manufacturers. SK Hynix has got a giant booth where they're just talking about all the AI servers that they're enabling and things like that. So yes, that is definitely at the show. I think even though Computex as a whole has like an AI tagline,
Yeah.
you'll have to look and see exactly what they say. But if you go to MSI, for example, or ASUS, you don't walk around and see like tons, like MSI had a few AI monitor features, like that's a thing still. But compared to a few years ago, it's like way dumbed down, I would say, like very little of those things, which is, in my opinion, I guess, really good to see. Did Gigabyte have any of that AI top stuff, like the branding that they use?
They'd have the existing boards, but there was nothing new from Gigabyte that I saw anyway.
Yeah.
They had what was it, the Infinity Next motherboard?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, that was arguably worse. It's space grade server heat sinks or something.
I didn't think that board looked very good personally.
Yes.
In terms of like the material design and stuff.
Yeah, the AI stuff had been reeled in massively on the consumer side. And I think that's just down to consumer sentiment. People just, they're over it at this point.
I think the one thing that is probably the closest that we saw was a lot of the tie-ins with Nvidia or some sort of Jensen related thing. A lot of companies had, Jensen would come by the booth and sign a product and they'd be like, Nvidia branding in areas that I didn't think were overly relevant. So I did a media booth tour at Samsung Display, who make QD-OLED panels, and they had a section at the booth that was all about like how QD-OLEDs related to Nvidia's AI deployments, which is like, it's a bit of a stretch because they just make displays. They were trying to say like, like the way you interface with AI applications is through, our QD-OLED screens, and we're a big partner with Nvidia on stuff. And it's like, and they had this like signed Jensen thing that was there that they were sort of showing off. And I was like, look, a bit of a stretch, like you make displays, but that was sort of the most common thing, as opposed to, like we sort of said a few years ago, where AI cases were a thing, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So, and I think we've got another similar question, which was, what was the most confusing item to be integrated with AI? And yeah, I guess just because we didn't see too many like products with that in the name, right, that it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, I looked at basically everything MSI had. It ended up stretching out to a 40-minute video, which surprised me because it didn't feel like I was really providing 40 minutes of content there. There didn't seem to be that many products, but by the time we sort of went over everything, there was some interesting power supplies. And actually the safeguard feature was from an AI power supply. So it was I think they've had that in the name for a while, so not sure if you can count that. But MSI didn't, to my knowledge, have a whole heap of weirdly positioned AI products.
Yeah, they had some AI features in monitors, and I saw that across a couple of different brands, but nothing that was like, that's a really egregious use of AI. Like, it's just the way it is, right? Like LG, for example, come out with like an AI super resolution feature. So then MSI and Gigabyte and ASUS will do a similar thing and call all of those things AI. I actually saw a report from, I think it was one outlet that saw that MSI had actually removed some of the AI features in a monitor that they'd shown at a previous trade show like CES or Computex, because a lot of those features were sort of branded as cheating. And so instead of trying to go all in on AI and try and convince people that these AI cheat features are good, they just removed them.
Smart.
So, well, yeah, I agree. It's very smart. But again, like no crazy like, oh, here's, we're trying to use AI for our air cooler, which is just a fan and a heat sink. Like that just wasn't really happening at the show, which is good. A bit more of the focus on things that actually matter.
All right, Tim. The typical kind of Computex question here. I'm sure this was upvoted though. What PC peripheral or accessory did you like most and excited for in Computex? For me personally, there wasn't really that much that I was excited for. Obviously, we don't really get massively into the case stuff and the cooler stuff, but AIOs, in my opinion, they've been pretty much the same for a while now. There's just more with screens and bigger screens and things. And not really sure I get excited for that. Some of them are neat. Some of them look to be good quality products, but I wouldn't say I'm excited for those. We're even talking about, mechanical keyboards. Like we saw a couple of different brands bring out what genuinely look like high quality mechanical keyboards, something I would use myself. But I'm like, they're not better than the mechanical keyboard that I'm currently using. So that it's not that I'm not really excited for them, and they're not cheaper or doing something different. They're just like nice looking keyboards. Kind of the same thing with cases. Like there are some cool looking case designs and some interesting cases, but there's been interesting and cool looking cases for a long time now. There's so many cases I would enjoy making a PC build in that it's not something I'm like, oh, I really can't wait for this new exciting case to come out so I can finally build that system that I wanted to build. So on that side of things, yeah, not so much. And obviously there's no new graphics cards or anything like that. The motherboard stuff's pretty stale at the moment. They're the things I'm interested in, CPUs, GPUs, motherboards. So yeah, I can't think of anything that I would say I'm truly excited for. There's possibly something I missed at the show, because seeing everything at the show at the moment, it's like going to Disney World or Disneyland or whatever and trying to do that in one day. Computex has become quite a massive show. It's extremely busy, and moving around is exhausting at the best of times. So we saw as much as we could see. Wooting had some pretty cool stuff. I personally purchased and own a Wooting keyboard, and they had some cool stuff there, but none of it was radically different to what they were already offering. Just a couple of extra neat things. So I don't know, what do you reckon?
Yeah, similar. I mean, like, I find it hard to get excited about a case at the best of days, even when there's like genuinely new technology. I find it quite a boring product category, and obviously a lot of Computex is like case related things. That ferrofluid speaker thing that I saw someone else cover, I didn't see this in person, but I thought that was kind of neat.
I liked how they were like, it will work for 3 years. Like, oh, what happens after that? Like, we don't know. So it's good for they're guaranteeing that it's kind of like warranted for 3 years, may keep working, may not. Not sure. I thought that was quite funny.
I also saw a demonstration at the Noctua booth of the Carbice Ice Pad, which is being bundled with the 5800X3D.
Yep.
I don't know whether this counts as an accessory or whatever. But it's sort of, when it was announced and I was sort of going through the information with that AMD release, I was like, okay, so this is similar to like the thermal grizzly things that we've advertised, like the cryo sheet that you sort of just apply, and all that sort of thing. But the demonstration they had, the actual the ice pad is a little different to the way that Thermal Grizzly's pad works, and that was quite interesting to me, the fact that it was a little stickier. So a lot of the problems with the Thermal Grizzly solution is that they can slide around a bit when you're trying to install them. They're very easy to just sort of like, a gust of wind will sort of like blow them away, and they're quite brittle as well. But the Carbice ice pad is sort of a bit stickier and a bit more durable, they claim at least. And I saw the pad, it feels a little sticky, and they put it on a motherboard, they flipped it upside down, and the pad didn't fall off, which I thought was, that was interesting at least, but it's not something to be like, whoa, everyone go out and buy one of those. It was like, that's a neat evolution of things we've seen before. I
feel like there's a joke in there. Tim being most interested in a thermal interface material at Computex.
Well, yeah, that's true. And then of course, there was a fair bit of monitor news, whether that counts as an accessory or peripheral or whatever, I'm not sure. But there was a lot of new panel technologies and things, new panel formats being debuted at the show. We went and saw LG Display, which they were able and willing to talk on record about products up to 2028. So our video on Monster Unboxed covers a lot of that stuff that I found interesting. But yeah, for the like PC component side of things, nothing burger of a show, I would say, largely. Yep.
All right, pretty straight to the point here, Tim. Did you feel it was a waste of your time? So the show itself. I know the side benefit of these events is Steveception and actually meeting other creators face to face. But was there anything show-wise that was worth boarding the plane for? Well, obviously we did the catch up with Gamers Nexus. Tim and I will appear on Jay's channel, Jay's 2 Cents. We filmed with him. It was nice to meet Jay for the first time. We obviously caught up with some other YouTubers, tech guys. So that was nice. That was fun. Did a dinner and stuff like that. So that was good. But as for the show being worth it, for me personally, probably not. A lot of the stuff that I saw I covered here, I could have done from the comfort of my own home and not had to do the whole plane trip. And
well, actually, you reviewed the 9070 GRE from your home before coming here.
That's true. That was one of the things I covered here but
Sort
didn't
of,
cover
yeah.
here, that was announced here. And I've written a script for what I think is a really interesting video that I hope you guys are going to find really interesting and enjoy, which you'll see, I don't know, a week from now. And I did that in my hotel room because I was kind of like, well, I've gone to all the companies that we usually, you know, I went and visited ASRock. I filmed a little bit there. We didn't make a video with that ASRock coverage because there wasn't enough there to really warrant a video. I thought maybe that could go on another video, but then I went to Gigabyte. There was the Infinity Next motherboard that I was like, this looks kind of ugly. Asus had really nothing. They had the retro motherboard that looks cool, but sort of been covered prior to the show. DeBauer did a really great video on it. So if you want to know about that board, just go to DeBauer's channel. And they had a massively oversized 5090. So I know all you guys are sitting there going, give us more 5090 content. All we want to see is like a 20th anniversary edition 5090 that's, you know, twice the size of a normal 5090. That's great content. So I didn't even bother pulling the camera out for that one. So that, that was, I basically was like, well, I'm kind of done here. Went back to the hotel room and started working on other content, but you got a lot of stuff to go over.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have been justified coming for just the monitor unbox side of things with all the different monitor panels and things like that that were announced at the show, which would have been, you know, good for sure. I mean, obviously I'm here for hardware unbox as well. And like, you know, I was able to cover DLSS 4.5 ray reconstruction. They announced that they had a demo. We could sort of get hands-on time with it before the actual release of that technology in a couple of months, which was interesting at least. But if you had told me ahead of time absolutely everything, like if you sent me a list of everything that was going to be shown and I was like tossing up, should I go for DLSS 4.5 and nothing else, I would have been like, you know, probably not worth it. I mean, yeah, like it's great to meet the other creators. It's great that we can make, because we've made not just this Q&A series, you'll hopefully have already seen on the channel our discussion about the sort of renting of game hardware sort of angle video that we made. We do those sorts of videos here because, you know, we don't live super close to make lots of videos, but that content doesn't really require us to be physically here. We could make those discussions elsewhere. So yeah, like it's probably the least interesting trade show that I've been to for hardware unbox level coverage. And a lot of the previous years, there's maybe been like, oh, here's our new, you know, we can't call it X870 yet, but here's our range of upcoming boards or something like that. But
well, Gigabyte did have that, you know, next generation motherboard. We didn't actually see that though, so that wasn't at their booth. I guess you had to get a private meeting to see that. We didn't do that.
That's right. And last year, of course, Nvidia announced GPUs that were being released during the show.
Yep. So
that created a lot of, you know, interesting videos that we could make. You know, obviously we tested one of the products here in Taipei, much to the annoyance of Nvidia. So those sorts of things weren't here this time.
Overall, it was certainly worth coming because we, you know, we've diversified on the channel. We cover a lot of different things. But for me specifically, not as much. But anyway, it's fine.
Yeah.
Also supporting our Computex coverage is Be Quiet and their excellent new range for 2026. Some of their latest offerings include power supplies like the Dark Power 6, AIOs such as the Pure Loop 3, additions to the light base lineup, and a great selection of peripherals. Be Quiet's entire range is German designed, enjoying excellent build quality and silent performance. So for more information, please check the links in the video description. Doom and gloom aside, all right, we're going to need a minute or two to shift that out of the way.
Yep, sure.
How do you feel about Nvidia's new ARM chips?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you weren't just focusing on like PC gaming hardware for like desktop systems, this was probably the biggest announcement, would you say, in terms of like hardware announcements?
Yeah.
The RTX Spark chip. Obviously, we didn't cover it on the channel because we don't really cover laptops or mini PCs. Well, at least we don't cover laptops anymore. So yeah, we did see this chip demoed for us at the Nvidia suite. So they took us around and showed us what could be done on some of the laptops that were powered by RTX Spark. I guess I'm kind of in two minds about it because the demos that they showed in terms of, you know, the form factor they were showing, playing games like Alan Wake, they had Fortnite running there and a few other games. You know, it ran well on those laptops. The performance seemed reasonable. The thing that impressed me the most actually was the the quietness of the
like
laptop systems.
Very slim profile as well.
Yeah, so
a lot of power and a very compact laptop.
Yeah, like the industrial design on some of the like the Microsoft Surface devices that they had there was really nice. Ran quiet, the performance seemed good, like I said. Didn't seem like it was, just chugging down power. And there was one demo where they just unplugged the power cord and the performance didn't change at all, which has been a problem for us when we've taken like gaming laptops to conventions to do like editing work on. They had this neat Premiere demo where they were showing us some things it could do and how the performance didn't change on battery, which was interesting for us as creators that use laptops occasionally for those things. But then on the other hand, it's like the chip itself is old, like it's over a year old. They announced it first in, I think, the DGX Spark sort of mini PC type thing for AI last year. It's largely unchanged since then. So it's not cutting edge from that sense. And then obviously the main concern is the price. So it's nice to see, like, yeah, this is a cool, nice form factor, slim, not loud, good performing laptop. But then a lot of the sort of whispers and things that we heard about the pricing was that, these are premium systems, like $2,000 plus.
Yeah.
And all of the configurations have absurd amounts of, well, not absurd if you need it for your workloads, but, very high levels of memory. Like there's 64, 128 gigabyte configurations. And those are going to be extremely expensive, which sort of kills the enjoyment of it. Like if this was a mainstream platform that like
amazing.
You could get this really nice, metal unibody laptop. It's cool and quiet. It runs games with like 50, 70 level performance. And it was like, maybe a little over $1,000. I don't know actually what's reasonable for a laptop these days, but that would sound...
I mean, that would be very good.
That would be very, very good, I would think.
Yep.
But that's just not the reality. It's an expensive premium. Like Nvidia doesn't sell you low-end affordable hardware anymore.
No,
so.
for consumers, it's like a tech demo, which a lot of Nvidia's stuff has been over the years now in terms of, for the typical consumer. So it's a technically impressive product. It's not really that different to AMD's Strix Halo. We've had discussions about APUs being pointless on the Hardware Unboxed podcast. Multiple of them. I think we might have even had one as recent as this year.
Yep.
A lot of people got upset about that, pointed to Strix Halo being evidence that we're wrong about that. But Strix Halo is very expensive. So it's not some sort of entry level, low-end replacement. And this is the same thing. It's, technically impressive what it can do, but ultra expensive. So extreme high-end premium product. So that...
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a possibility that we would do some testing on the channel because they did have, mini PC type products. And I guess the interesting part there is sort of the Windows on ARM stuff. It's not the standard x86 that we've tested for a while now.
Very interesting.
And it'll be interesting to see, things like game compatibility. Are there certain situations where, games are really slowed down because they have to do translation or emulation or whatever. So there's interesting technical things there. It's just any coverage that we did would be like tech, as you said, it's tech demo type things. It's very unlikely we're going to be like, go out and you replace your gaming PC with a mini PC powered by this thing.
Yep.
So yeah, again, like I guess when I'd heard, because it was rumored for a long time that this chip was going to be shown here and announced. And I was sort of like, Windows on ARM's kind of gone nowhere. Like it's not a product that most people are excited about. So I guess Nvidia did do a good job of having demos that sort of showed that it's maybe not as bad as I thought it was going to be in terms of compatibility. They announced anti-cheat things, anti-cheat partnerships, which was a problem previously. They announced partnerships with Premiere, a tool that we use, which was cool to see. But yeah, again, like that's just from a fanboy sort of like, hey, I'm cool. I'm interested to see new stuff type of thing. So yeah.
All right, I think that'll do it for part 1 of the Q&A series. We've got probably enough questions for a part 2. We didn't want to make this video super long, so we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, part 2 is going to have a lot of the sort of not necessarily just Computex related stuff. You guys did ask us a few other things as well. So we'll be getting to all those other topics in part 2, which you'll see on the channel shortly, I think.
Great. Well, as always, do the like thing, the subscribe thing. And if you want more Hardware Unboxed goodness, we have the join button or Patreon. Sign up to either one of those. We'll give you access to our exclusive Discord server, monthly live streams, behind the scenes content, and Q&A stuff. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm your host, Steve.
I'm your host, Tim.
See you next time.